by staying at the futuristic Echo Base, which is only a short but very exhilarating 10-minute ride from the runway. Welcome to Echo Base. Now the first thing you'll notice about here is that it would not look out of place on Mars. And in fact, the whole place was designed to look like a space station. And that was part of the creative genius of one of the founders, Patrick, who is very heavily influenced by sci-fi and Star Wars. And you can see the Star Wars influence here on the font and the words that he's using for these different areas. Now, the layout of the camp is you have 3 accommodation pods on each side of the central location. And we are in the hub of this central location. And from here, you can get to 4 different areas. You can get to the observatory, the refueling station, the decontamination station, and the decompression chamber. But we'll get to those in just a minute. But here is where all the guests come in and congregate before they go out on a wild Antarctic expeditions, and each one of them has a little station here with all of their specialized equipment. You have harness, hard hat, you have your crampons, which are very, very important, and in some instances you're going to need an ice pick. So really neat. Now, one of the really cool features of this room is on the floor there is a map of Antarctica showing all the contour lines, and they've even labeled where we are. So we're right here at Wolf Fang. And if you head south, you reach Dixie Camp, which is where they actually refuel before they take people to the South Pole itself. Now, that's all good and fine, but my favorite part of this little room is this station here. Drinks and some snacks. And they must have done the research because they have my absolute favorite here, the Millionaire Shortbread. So let's go have a look around. Let's check out the observatory. Now, between each of these areas, there is a corridor that connects them. And talk about sci-fi. This definitely feels like something out of a sci-fi movie. Look at this. And you can tell it's actually quite windy outside. The weather here gets very, very extreme. Today's an example of that, but this is pretty strong, so it's holding it together. Wow. Okay, let's check out the observatory. So this is the observatory, and it's basically a space to gather and socialize and talk about all your wonderful experiences from your day of adventure. And what better way to do that than with your favorite cocktail, and the bar provides everything you need to do that. Now, the space is dominated by this beautiful piece of art, and I would try to describe it to you, but I wouldn't be doing the artist any favors. But I think you can pretty much say it's quite magical. Now, it's huge, and rumor has it that they had to tear the roof off of the pod just to get it in. It kind of reminds me of like a big sun. And speaking of which, there are no lights here in these pods for 2 reasons. 1, they want to save power and electricity, and 2, the camp is only open during the summer months. In the summer months in Antarctica, the sun is in the sky 24 hours a day. So when you look out there now and see that light, that's pretty much how it looks all day long and technically all night long, which is really hard to get used to, especially when it's time to go to bed. This is a quite aptly named decompression chamber, and the first thing I see when I come in here are all these beautiful artifacts that are presented in a rather space age-like way. But this is the room that you would come into when the weather's so extreme outside that you're not able to go on any excursions. And there's something really calming and zen-like about being in the safety and comfort of this pod and looking out into that wild, windswept landscape. Now, this room also doubles as a library. And as you can probably guess, all of the material in here is about intrepid exploration. Now, one of the really cool things that I like about here is that you can actually send postcards from here. So you imagine sitting at home and a mailman dropping off a postcard from Antarctica. That would be pretty incredible. Now, you can come here to the daybed and snuggle up with your favorite book. And speaking of books, our host Patrick is in fact a fiction author. Where does he get the time? Now, he's wrote several books, and this particular book, unsurprisingly titled Beneath the Ice. So let's get to reading. So this is a decontamination chamber, and for me, quite comically, it actually looks the most like a spaceship. Now, we looked at the other pods and they were spectacular, but for me, honestly, this is probably technically the most impressive chamber there is on the camp. Why? Well, a couple of reasons. First of all, there's this. Running water at the faucet. Now, that might not seem like much, but when you think about it, where we are in Antarctica, there is no running water. There's no rivers, there's no lakes, and there's certainly no public utility system. All of the water that is here is frozen. Now, the chamber also has a couple of bathrooms, which are technological marvels in themselves, but we'll hear about that later. And my favorite part of these chambers is this, the showers. Now, we've already established that running water is quite incredible, but to have hot running water, and the way that they do that is they shovel snow into a smelter, which is a snow melter. They store it, and then they have to keep it from freezing. Now, I had the opportunity to have a shower. The pressure was incredible, the temperature was wonderful. In fact, it was much better than the little apartment that I used to have in New York. Now, I can't emphasize enough what a luxury this is in Antarctica. Before these pods were here, if you came to Antarctica, you stayed in a tent. And as we know, there's no running water, never mind hot running water in a tent. So to be able to come off the frozen white desert after a day of activities, come into the pod and enjoy a hot shower is just amazing. But it also gives you a sense of how valuable this commodity is. And it makes you realize that, you know, you should maybe not take a long shower. You appreciate the resource that you have. The cherry on top is that there's an incredible view out the window. Now, I have been reassured that this is one-way glass because I'd hate to think that I was scaring off some of the other guests. All right, so I think I'm going to take the opportunity and have a shower while I'm here. Go on, I'm having the shower, and I'll talk to you guys later. Now this, for me, is the most important part of the camp, the refueling station. This is where you have 3 meals a day: breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And interestingly enough, because the sun stays in the sky 24 hours a day, it's the only way that I can really keep track of time. Now, this table may look like an ordinary table, but it does serve another purpose. Now, this table was handmade on property, and if you look at this little brass line all the way down the table, it might give you a little hint or a clue as to what else this table is used for. That's right, it's a table tennis table, and it even comes with a little brass end net. And I do hear that there are some really intense table tennis games go on here into the wee hours. Now, the food that is served in here is absolutely incredible, even more so by the fact that everything you eat has to be imported in. Nothing, and I mean nothing, grows in Antarctica, and all the magic happens through those doors. And I'm really excited to talk to Chef about that. But I'm really eager now to go show you my accommodation. Stay with us as we see the amazing accommodations here at Echo Base, and I'll learn exactly why it costs $5 every time I use the restroom.